we're going to talk a whole bunch about real football here in a second. And sometimes Nate will give shout outs at the end of a show. I'm going to go ahead and do it right here at the top to two, maybe three different people. I wanted to give a shout out to a guy named Garrett, a listener of Only Weird Games, who said hi to me at the Glass Animals concert, which is great.
Yes.
Only note for you, Garrett, or anyone else, if you could wait until, I think this goes for all three of us, if you see us out in public, wait until our wives are around, because it just makes us seem much cooler. Only note from Garrett, other than that, 10 out of 10, great to see you, great concert, seeing Glass Animals. Didn't even almost die this time. Last time they were in Kansas City, didn't get to use those tickets. This time, I did. And also a shout out to a couple in front of us in the pit who said that they were on mushrooms. And I believe them. I have no reason to think that they've ever listened to Only Weird Games. I just wanted to mention that I do think in some way they changed the course of my life forever. Not in that way. No, Seth, not that way. No.
Thanks for listening to KC Sports Network, proudly presented by Emprise Bank. If you're thinking about starting a business or know someone who is, check out Emprise Bank's SBA loans. It's always good to know your options, and they can be your partner in possible.
We'll get right into it today, fellas, because Kadarius Toney has visited the Seattle Seahawks, and we are back.
Hey, Gino. We're thinking about bringing Kadarius in.
No.
We'll talk to him. Hey, I hear it gets cold up here. He might need that ski suit. So no, man, let's go. Let's have a nice conversation with Kadarius Toney. You think he can run some routes today? Think he'll run some routes for us, Gino?
Why it's actually Andy Reid and Patrick Mahomes' fault I didn't succeed the last 2 years. The Kadarius Toney story. I can't do this. I'm sorry. I feel bad. I hope he pulls it together and succeeds. I can't do this. I can't. Yeah.
I can always do this. I mean, come on. Gino, you're going to hit him in stride. He's going to be open. After that, man, you'll see. Anything. He can do anything.
That, you know what, Nate? I think that is technically true. He can do anything. There's no telling if it's going to benefit or harm you. But at the very least, I've gotten my bingo square checked off for the day. I cannot, will not, never will quit Kadarius Toney, even when it is certainly in my own. It's only going to be easier to not quit Kadarius Toney when he's somebody else's receiver. Almost said there problem, but that is certainly not the main thing in today's show, though, because we are guys.
What if he scores a touchdown against the Denver Broncos? What if he scores a touchdown?
I would. Then I'll buy a throwback.
In a throwback Seattle Seahawks
night. Do it in the throwbacks, and I'll consider scooping a jersey. We are like 50 hours away from the beginning of the 2024 NFL season. We can smell real football from here. We are going to do a smidge of looking back on a few things today, some news, expected news, and a little bit more context on the injury fronts, a little look back onto something from Patrick Mahomes throughout last season. I mean, it's stuff we've talked about before, but I think one particular thing that one Seth Keysor wrote about. I'm Joshua Brisco, by the way. That other voice you've heard is Nate Taylor. We could consider that new people may be joining the show for the first time as actual football is happening. Fellas, I am both so ready and a little overwhelmed by the closeness of the actual kickoff of the season. This offseason has been brutal. It has been long. And now all of a sudden, it's right on top of us. Here we go.
It goes fast. The days are long, but the years are short. You gonna talk about your kids
and cry again?
I didn't cry. I welled up. Nate, you weren't here. There was a day where we were talking about something to do with life, and I was like, and someone like me, and then we both went at the same time. Whoa,
hey.
Let's. But no, I'm telling you, that's really good. I can say this as the elder statesman or elder something of Only Weird Games.
Elder.
Well, I don't have control of my household, so I don't have the qualifications to be an elder.
This is our elder bishop, Mr. Keysor.
Yep, that's me.
He can walk you through some of the Wednesday night activities here at the church.
The off season, The days feel long as you're in June and you're like, nothing is happening. And then suddenly, boom, football. That is a lot like life. Those of you in your 20s that are like, I bet it slows down. It does not. It gets much faster. And then it keeps going. You will be shocked when you're 39 that you still feel like you're 21. And then you roll out of bed and you're like, ugh. And then you look in the mirror like, ugh. And you're like, what's going on with all this? But whatever. That happens. That's just life. But you feel mentally like you're still like 21. And then again, you try to do something like help a friend clear out some trees in the land they just bought. And you're like, oh no, I'm washed. But the days are long, the years are short, or months in the case of off season. I can't believe we're here. Much like with many things and I'm actually planning on writing about this later this week. It's so easy to miss in the moment. History is on the line this year. The Chiefs are looking to do something, and they're very cognizant of it. They're tweeting it out. They are trying to make history. They are trying to do something that's literally never been done. I know like Green Bay won 3 NFL championships in a row or something back, before cars existed or whatever.
TV wasn't in color. It don't count.
There were like 12 teams in the league. Everyone was allowed to this was before Len Dawson was smoking heaters at halftime and drinking a Fresca, which I stand by. Literally the coolest anyone has ever looked in a picture. And I say that as, a devout, don't drink, smoke, chew, or grow with girls that do. Yeah, there it is. But that's what keeps hitting me so Thursday night, another Chiefs season begins. It's gone so quickly, this Mahomes era, this dynasty, and we get a chance to watch all season, and that's just something to have people keep in mind. It's not going to be the three-peat. It's not going to be won or lost on Thursday night. The Chiefs could lose by 40 on Thursday. Now, that would shock me. That'd be weird. The Chiefs could lose on Thursday, and that's one of the beautiful things about what they did this last regular season. Until not even Christmas. Until the regular season has ended and the Chiefs are out of the playoffs, everyone's going to be like, don't do it, man. Don't count them out. They're just going to come back. They're just going to come back again. And so I'm excited. It feels like it's so full of import. I don't know. I can't wait. And there's just so much on the line. Like the idea that we could literally watch something happen in real time that has never happened before. What an opportunity. What a time to be alive.
Let's start with some of the logistical here real quick, Nate, off the top. Hollywood Brown, he's out. That's not surprising. Andy Reid has been kind of shockingly open about that. I will note that I did the math on the timeline, and this is not a 1-to-1 because this is a weird injury. We don't have enough of a sample size on this injury to be able to say, oh, it happened like this last time. It's 4 to 6 weeks or whatever. But I believe Tyreek Hill's total recovery time from suffering the injury to returning to play, I believe, was 35 days. And the number of days from Hollywood's injury to the Bengals game is 36. I think that's including the day of, something like that. But so no surprise at all that he wouldn't play in this game. Then also, Clyde Edwards-Helaire goes on the non-football illness list. He is now off the active roster. They've made some corresponding moves with the bottom of their practice, or the bottom of the roster and the top of the practice squad. That's kind of rotated through a little bit. Obviously, Samaje Perine now in the mix. Anything on Hollywood, and then the context on Clyde, Nate, and then we can talk about the running back room off of that, but with what the Chiefs have done here.
Yeah. So with all of that being said. Now, once Thursday games ends, whether the Chiefs win or lose, the next important date for the Chiefs will be the following Wednesday. So a little more than a week from now, whether or not Hollywood Brown is on the practice field will give us a first indication as to whether or not he'll be available for week 2 against the Cincinnati Bengals. Now, the Chiefs are optimistic at this point. That's understandable. Given that, he's been out at practice, he appears to be doing well in terms of recovering from the injury. It's just a matter of how comfortable will Andy Reid feel giving him, a decent role, a limited one compared to what you would normally have him do if he was fully healthy. But also, if he can practice throughout the week, as I've said before, and this is a good reminder since we are officially in the regular season, if you're not the quarterback Andy would like to see you practice at least Thursday, Friday before he feels comfortable putting you out there on a Sunday game, this being against the Cincinnati Bengals. If that doesn't happen, then the logical conclusion of his recovery and return to play would be against the Atlanta Falcons in week 3 on the road in prime time. So you could get obviously more time to rest and recover if the Chiefs choose not to use him against the Cincinnati Bengals. But I think next Wednesday we'll get our first real indication of Hollywood Brown. As it relates to Clyde Edwards-Helaire, he has been with the team. I think that's something that I want to make very clear. Like, he's going to be with the team throughout this 4-week period, right? Even though the Chiefs are giving him more time, as many resources as they can at their disposal with his, comfort, with his comfort, with his ability to get the treatment and the sessions that he needs to sort of get through his, post-traumatic stress disorder, which again is sort of a very key marker of the offseason, because that's when his symptoms sort of flared up continually, and then obviously that bled into much of training camp. He's still his usual self. We talked before about this, Josh, the fact that his weight has fluctuated quite a bit since training camp, and getting back in football shape. It's just for his own mental health, but also for not trying to rush a guy back who's been in and out of practices for weeks now. He will probably need a pretty significant acclimation ramp up period physically, if everything is sort of stabilized with the PTSD that he's been sort of experiencing and trying to live through. So it's understandable. Once they saw Samaje Perine, I believe on Sunday, they were comfortable making this decision to say, okay, we do not need to rush Clyde Edwards-Helaire. Samaje Perine, a veteran, a 7-year veteran, I believe, been on multiple NFL teams. He feels comfortable with his limited role for Thursday night's game, right? Third down back. Maybe we run a couple running plays for you just to keep the defense honest, that you feel comfortable with, that you've ran before in your career, based on, our offensive playbook. And then, hey, we'll obviously, give you more of a bigger chunk of the playbook for week 2. Now you can let Clyde get as healthy, both mentally and physically as possible. And I do want to remind people that, like, him speaking up in training camp allowed for all of this to happen.
Yeah.
Because there wasn't going to be a cloud over technically what is wrong with Clyde Edwards-Helaire, even though, from a talent standpoint, his talents are starting to diminish. It happens, especially at that position, a lot sooner than, say, other positions. So he's not the player he was in 2020 as a rookie, but he can still be a valuable contributor in some capacity later on this season. But the team didn't want to put anything out there unless he was comfortable, which is why it was so important for him to verbalize, hey, this is what I'm dealing with. The shooting at the parade clearly had an impact on him. There's some other gun violence that he's gone through, when he was a student at LSU that we've talked about before. So all these things are the proper context as to why he's not ready for this particular portion of the season, but he will still be with the team quite regularly. We saw him, reporters, myself included, we saw him yesterday in a pretty good mood, understanding that the team is trying to do their best by him. They do not have to pay him on the non-football illness list. They are choosing to keep him on the payroll, to honor, their part of the contract. Again, with the expectation that he's going to at some point be available for the season, but he needs to focus on his mental health, which is quite a contrast to the league that I literally entered in 2018. I don't know if the league would have been quite capable or have as much mechanisms, and this is part of the collective bargaining agreement too. I know I'm getting way deep inside football, but I want to remind people that, like, Clyde Edwards-Helaire is a very good human being who is trying to overcome something that most of us do not understand fully and do not experience based on his life experiences and ours, while also trying to play football at the literal highest level of the sport. So I'm glad that after much speculation, he's going to be given more time than the football player in his exact situation at his exact position would not have been given the opportunity a decade ago. And so good on the Chiefs, good on Clyde Edwards-Helaire. But now it sets up Samaje Perine, Isaiah Pacheco to get the heavy bulk of the offensive snaps against the Baltimore Ravens with a little sprinkling of Carson Steele, who will do a lot of special teams.
One other phrase from when he talked at training camp that is a part of all this, and you mentioned the weight fluctuation. She talked about the cyclic vomiting syndrome, just this like uncontrollable repeat. I'll spare everybody the details. Sometimes I listen to podcasts and like eat and stuff. So if you want to learn more about it, I didn't know about it until Clyde talked about it. Yet another benefit to being that level of open about it, which is still remains a very cool and very helpful thing that he did there. Not that you need to make a distinction between the psychological set off and the physical ramifications of that. It's all intertwined. Those are all can be put in one big bucket. But Clyde gave us some more of those details. You can see where that has been an ongoing issue for him. And now hopefully he'll have the time to recover there. And frankly, as you've laid out, Nate, in a shocker for an NFL football team, it seems like everybody is doing pretty much the right thing, including, again, I certainly can't name another NFL player who has talked about his experience with post-traumatic stress disorder during their NFL career. That again, also, and that's credit to Clyde and to the team as well. On the other colder side of where we're at now, to kind of go from that's the person, now we can talk about the depth chart and the numbers on the jerseys and whatnot. There's some cognitive dissonance and all of that, as always. But Seth, when you look at that running back room now, I'd argue that even given that Clyde is going to be sidelined for the next 4 weeks, we were talking about the running back room a month ago, 3 months ago, 4 or 5 months ago, the day after the Super Bowl. It was like, oh, I wonder what they're going to do with RB2, because Isaiah Pacheco can be the guy, but it's also the modern violent NFL at the modern violent version of that position. Can't just be one guy. Even with Clyde being consistently available, which we knew pretty early on in camp was going to be hard to project this year, something else needed to be added depth-wise. Perine is cut by the Broncos. The Chiefs obviously swoop in and at him there. We've seen good things from Carson Steele. Where is the running back room for you holistically right now without Clyde Edwards-Helaire involved?
The easiest way to phrase it, and again, I appreciate everything you guys had to say about the human element. So now we're talking the ball element. So the easiest way to say it would be that Perine, based on his film from last season that I went over, wrote about, we talked about it last week, would have been RB2 on the roster last year. That would have been above Clyde, and it would have been above Jet. His film was better last year than Jet's film was last year. Now, maybe if you go back to the year before where Jet still had a little bit more of that, just a little bit more of that burst, because he's not a tackle breaker. And that's no knock on him. That's just never been his game. But then when you lose that little extra, Jet, you can't, you've kind of run out of moves there. Whereas Perine's never been a guy who's very fast, but he's got, good center of gravity, built solidly, etc. I think he would have been RB2 last year. I think he would have been an upgrade. And so that's kind of where we're at now. Like, if you look at where we're at right now with Pacheco, Perine, then Steele, who I've had a lot of people ask me about this, like Carson Steele. If the Chiefs were looking for a pure runner, maybe he'd have a better shot at grabbing more snaps. And even then, maybe not. You got to remember, it's an incredibly small sample size, what we're looking at here. But we know Isaiah Pacheco is a better pure runner right now. At least we have every reason to believe so, right? But like, I had people talking about, I can't believe you think Perine's going to take Steele's snaps. I guess the way I would ask people to think about this is that Carson Steele he had a handful of good snaps in preseason. Perine has had multiple years of having many good snaps in real games against first-teamers and first-team offense, including what he did last year in Sean Payton's offense, which, again, it's very different from Andy Reid's, but does ask for some of the same things from its runners. In terms of, it's actually interesting if you look at some of the pass protection looks and some of the routes that he ran, which, there's only so many routes you can run as a running back, but the timing of them, it was kind of interesting, actually, watching some of the similarities there between how Peyton designs things. And he, much like Reed, is more deliberate with his screens, for example, and their setups and their landmarks and all of that stuff. The route combinations are all very intentional, but he's just a much, 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 much more proven player. And it's the mental side of things with pass protection where, like with Pirine, he's only gonna have a couple weeks of practice. So he's going to probably need an extra, hey, this, that, and the other thing. But you're at home. And that I think that matters in terms of a guy who's only been there for 2 weeks. Him being a 7-year veteran, he's seen a lot of this before. But also being at home where your primary job is going to be pass protection or being hot. Mahomes can take an extra 2 seconds with Pirine because you're at home, so it's going to be quieter. And you can say, hey, make sure, alert, it looks like the mic's, they're setting the slot, whatever, right? I think all that matters. I think he's going to see more snaps than people expect. I think he'll be the RB2. I think Pacheco will be the primary guy. I think Pirine will be RB2. And I think that's what you're going to see all season. I feel much better about the running back room now than I did a month ago. And I do think Steele has the potential to kind of fulfill that quote unquote power back role that Clyde was starting to fill, to his credit, was kind of finding a way to pivot his career a little bit to more of a power back, third down type guy. I think Carson Steele can potentially do that, but we don't know what his ceiling might be in that role. So I actually feel much, 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 much better about the running back room than I did a month ago. And that's just that's the breaks of the game. Pirine being cut was really an unexpected gift there, having a third down back that you can just slide right in there because that was the exact gap they had in the offense.
Can I share a statistic or a series of statistics, a group of stats, Josh?
I'd love that. Yeah, absolutely.
That will kind of shock you because so much of the conversation on Thursday night, and understandably so, will be about, hey, this is the rematch of the AFC Championship game. Mm-hmm. There were 3 players in my mind who quite literally carried the Chiefs offense against the Baltimore Ravens in that 17-10 victory. One of which, of course, is Patrick Mahomes, who played excellent. Travis Kelce, guys, you're never going to see a better game from this man. Okay, never. All right. 11 targets, 11 catches, draped by Kyle Hamilton himself. 1 touchdown, 116 yards. I mean, you cannot get a better game from a tight end. But also, quietly, the Chiefs ran the ball from their running backs 25 times. 25 times Patrick Mahomes handed the ball to a Chiefs running back. How many of those carries were Isaiah Pacheco's, gentlemen?
I'm going to say 22.
I'm thinking a buttload.
I think it might be 25 is my concern.
24.
Woo!
And that's another aspect with Pirine that he's not a great runner on film, but he's competent.
Yes. 24 of the 25 carries were to Isaiah Pacheco, just going through a brick wall.
Yep.
And they gave one carry to Clyde Edwards-Helaire, and then they said we're not doing that again. So yeah, they need to to Seth's point, if Pacheco is the fastball, they really do need to find a changeup and a slider in a heartbeat. And to Seth's credit, yes, I mean, this is going to be, depending on the pitch you want for a certain game. Hey, Samaje Perine is probably going to be the slider tomorrow to the Pacheco being the fastball. And we'll see if Carson Steele can be a changeup from time to time. But that's much later in the season because I want to remind people, his first NFL game is in 2 days, guys.
Yeah.
That I think
Carson Steele has never played an NFL game. Never.
He earned the hype that he got, but he got the hype from separating himself from Deneric Prince and Keontae Ingram and the like, right? It was like, can somebody separate themselves? And frankly, to some extent, Clyde. But it was, hey, out of the non-Pacheco group, who can separate here? I've got a real future big brain take we can talk about whenever we're looking back on this offseason at some point, I think, because the way the Chiefs got here, P. Ryan is going. I think they're gonna three-peat. Samaje P. Ryan is going to be discussed as the biggest Brett Veach edition ever, and I'm gonna have to look at the sky like a crazy person and say, wait a second, why didn't they do something before the Broncos decided to gift them a competent running back who fills their role? But I don't want to be there right now, so we don't have to be there right now.
I mean, we talked to J.K. Dobbins. Also we sniffed around Jacobs. He didn't want to be here.
Yeah, because he got a lot more money to go play for the precious
no,
underdog.
No, he didn't. No, I will not allow you to bitch. Those who don't know, Josh Jacobs had an excellent quote, former Raider. Excellent running back. Really good runner, really good pass catcher, really good pass pro. The Raiders are going to miss him. He was a big part of some of their pass pro stuff against Spags. He was quoted that, the Chiefs, came after him pretty hard, some version of that. But hold
on. Hey, cuz, I do this for a living. I ain't hear your name one time in the offseason.
So that's funny. So you're hearing a little something debunked there. Making a phone call is not pursuing you very hard.
Yes, or talking to your agent, just being like, "Hey, how's your guys' market?
What's the market?"
Yeah. What are you thinking about here? It is interesting. Green Bay gave him like $12 million per, but most of it's not guaranteed. So his market wasn't that hot, which is weird because I think he's a really good player. But his quote, and this was just classic to me, it's just such a good example. We really all are the heroes of our own stories, and I'm sure he's a great dude. But like to say, I'm the kind of guy that I don't want to join the dominant team. I want to beat the dominant team, said the Alabama guy.
Yeah.
Could
have gone to Mizzou, as Tucker notes. Tucker is maybe a little hurt still.
There's plenty of schools. I'm pretty sure when Nick Saban came and recruited him, he wasn't like, Nicky, I want to beat the dominant team. That's why I'm going to join Georgia, or whatever. You don't need to make stuff up. Let me just give advice to young men everywhere. You don't need to make stuff up, especially if you're young, handsome, successful, good at, you don't need to make crap up. Just say
incredibly well paid by the team that wanted to pay you more. That's okay.
Yes,
we can do that.
Right.
You went to a team that went to the divisional round of the playoffs last year. That a lot of people are picking.
Trent Williams on an annual basis tells the best team in the NFC to go bleep themselves until they give him a raise. It's the team he's on. It's okay if you want to just say you got the money. The Packers are good. It's fine.
It's part of why you play football is to get generational wealth for your family. Fair enough.
Great.
But no, anyway, I apologize. I dragged us off topic there, but that was funny. I do feel good about the running back room, better than I felt at any point last year, especially because McKinnon, struggled with some injuries throughout the year. So we'll see how P. Ryan comes in. Hopefully he's 28, I believe, maybe 29. But he didn't look like he'd slowed down anything last year. Chiefs fans might actually remember him. He was a running back with the Bengals in that one game in the AFC Championship where he just scored an inexplicable 50-yard touchdown. Where it was why did no one tackle him?
I have confirmed here that P. Ryan, again with the best beard in football, he will turn 29 in about 2 weeks.
We're good.
And as I have described, that is an ancient running back who is 1 full year younger than me. So I'm gonna go ahead and deal with that.
You're almost 30.
Yeah, I know. I'm almost half your age. Let's talk about what the Chiefs could do to make this three-peat happen. As soon as Seth cleans up the liquid he just sprayed all over his keyboard, maybe he can go ahead and put on his readers and tell us what he wrote, huh?
Well, that was unnecessary. All right. Important. So what I wanted to do this week is really
have a sip. Let's take a break.
Shop Chiefs tickets and more with no fees. Plus, save big with code KCSN at ticketsforless.com, the official ticket provider of KC Sports Network.
Seth was getting ready to talk again, and then Tucker on the delay basically cut him off a second time. Really?
No, that was impressive. That was the rare double doink.
Yeah, exactly.
But so I wanted to write about kind of things from 5,000 feet in the air heading into the season. And so one of the things that I wrote about are the most important non-obvious, although some of them are pretty obvious, but not as obvious, factors for the Chiefs 2024 season. I kind of want to look at, they're looking to make history. What are some of the biggest, I don't like saying X factors because that's picked up a certain connotation with Chiefs fans, not Dante Hall, but an individual who has had some struggles within his life and, y'all need Jesus, and that happens. So
and you know the deep lore because you're kind of a Chiefsaholic. Like, I mean, so you are really embedded.
Indeed. Well, and I mean, honestly,
Dante Hall on KCSN today with Dustin Colquitt. Thank you, Tucker. Hell yeah.
I was just about to say that.
I didn't see that. That rules.
That's why I threw it up.
The X Factor, Dante Hall, who, by the way, some of if I were to make a list of
Get Kendall Gammon in there and have the greatest three-man special team podcast ever made.
Oh,
that's crazy.
Some of the best memories I have of cheering for the Chiefs before any of this became a job, like 3 of them involved Dante Hall. Yeah, so that's really great. Anyway, so I wanted to look at things that are the biggest
joystick.
factors. The human joystick. So first things first, the things I didn't write about. I didn't write about injuries because that's obvious. That's for every team.
Boo to injuries.
Injuries are arguably one of the 2 most important things in winning a Super Bowl. There's you've got talent, you've got coaching, you've got injuries, and you've got luck. Those are the big 4, right? And so injuries and luck, I'm leaving out because there's luck that exists outside of injuries. Like there was a great thread. I'm not going to remember who. Scott Kasmer. That's how you say his name. Uh-huh. Yeah, Kasmer, where he's talking about how Tom Brady. Yeah, sure, he's the GOAT. He's also one of the luckiest players in history. And that's okay. It's okay to be both. It's okay to be great and lucky. The Tuck rule, this obscure rule. I mean, D4 lineup, that happens, right? Luck matters a ton. And the Chiefs have gotten lucky every year they've won the Super Bowl. Some of that, they've had some luck. A punt.
Some of it was Antonio Brown being crazy.
Yeah, right. A punt hit a guy in the foot in the Super Bowl, and the other guy wasn't able to recover it. The Chiefs, they recovered it, but they didn't create that. Some of it's luck. Every team gets good luck and bad luck.
Hey, Tommy Townsend got $4 to $5 million a year for that one punt.
So the biggest thing is I'm not talking about that. Obviously, yes, how Patrick Mahomes does and how Travis Kelce does and how Chris Jones, those are the big 3, right? How Andy Reid does, how Steve Spagnuolo does. They're the big 5, right? They are, I'm not going to keep going.
Yeah. Come on, keep going.
But
how does Mark Donovan sell more ads? The X Factor to the Chiefs 2024 season.
And so, brought to you by the Chief in the North newsletter. I should reach out to them. I'm sure they'd be super receptive to that.
Let's get a banner up in the stadium, man. Come on.
So, I wrote about multiple things that are kind of out.
$12 a second.
Yeah. I wrote about some of the things that are outside of those things. And I mean, there's a number of them in here. And so one of the things that I wrote about that I know people understand, but I really think people are in some way are underrating is Dave Merritt and the other guys.
I think of that. We didn't discuss this ahead of time. I think there are 2 that we absolutely need to talk about today that will also be reflected against the Ravens, and that's 1-1 to me.
Absolutely. And one thing I started off with, and this makes, people kind of forget because he's missed pretty much the whole preseason. I wrote, when push comes to shove, that's right, I'm just reading something on the internet. When push comes to shove, I'll be shocked if Jalen Watson isn't CB2 when the lights come on Thursday night. Oh, Nate's ducking, so this could be interesting. But here's the deal. If someone beats out Jalen Watson for the job of cornerback 2, good on them. Because Watson has been more consistent than everyone else, Nate.
Nate right now looks like a prairie dog. If you're just listening, he's popping up from under the screen like a prairie dog.
What if I could tell you I know who the starting quarterback's going to be?
I would be interested in knowing that it's Joshua Williams.
I would love to hear that. Oh, he's not allowed to say. So
no, not allowed. What was that? Huh? What?
So here's the deal. Whether it's Williams or Watson
or Najee Johnson,
which if it's Johnson, that in some ways is almost a best case scenario for Chiefs fans.
I'd be pretty surprised. I think it's you touched on this. It seems like it's Watson or Williams.
Yeah. I think it's Watson or Williams. I definitely think
so close.
It's one of them.
One of them, great. One of them, that's great. That's great.
So the thing with both of those guys,
that is our good news. All 3 of them are playing. They will all be on the field.
Oh, yeah.
depending on team.
The third corner, he's playing quite a bit. I don't expect to see
Although
McDuffie on the boundary quite as much.
Yeah, that's the question. That's the point.
So the thing is, with Watson and Williams, both of those guys are battle-tested. They've both been part of deep playoff runs against really talented teams and have generally held their own. It's just been in a little more of a limited role, especially for Williams, who is the more physically talented of the two. He's gigantic. He's also faster. They're both huge. And both of them are built for that boundary corner, press you into oblivion type stuff. Or we're in zone, but I'm going to give you a huge shove as you're trying to get into your route. Snead got great at that. And honestly, if you go back and watch Williams and Watson last year, that's part of their game is, hey, look, I'm enormous. So as you run by me, I am going to just Sean Smith the bejesus out of you and give you a good old shove. Let's see how your timing route works when I have pushed you 3 yards. That's perfectly valid. One thing, the Chiefs defense last year was elite. Not just above average, like it's been multiple other Spags years. Not even very good. It was an elite defense, and they leaned on that all the way to the Super Bowl. Part of the reason they were elite, a huge part, I would argue maybe even the primary part once you disinclude the existence of Chris Jones, was because Snead and McDuffie together were so dominant in coverage that they could play man coverage all day against the Niners. Go back and watch pretty much every big play by the Niners in the Super Bowl, other than one quick one to McCaffrey or like a trick play, right? It was not against man coverage. It was against zone because they made almost no big plays against man coverage because Snead and McDuffie dominated their two best guys. Now, when you take that step back from that level with Snead to even competent with Watson or Williams, and I expect competent play from them. They've shown it in the past. That changes what you can get away with schematically to an extent, and it changes how often those big things get in your way. The question for me is whether or not Merritt and Spags can coax 90 to 95% the efficacy out of a good group of corners. A lot of teams in the league, this is the funny thing, a lot of teams in the league would do a lot of terrible things for this cornerback group because you've got a superstar in Trent McDuffie. You've got two guys who are proven competent corners in like a halftime role. And then you've got some young guys that they really like. A lot of teams would kill for that. They built around it last year.
They did attempt to churn a ton of the bottom of the cornerback roster.
They did
after camp and at cutdowns.
Hey, Josh, I got
yes, Nate.
Hey, when in doubt, you know what we gonna do. I'm Merritt, you're Spags.
Great.
You know what the game plan is. Go ahead and tell them, Josh. When in doubt, what we gonna do on Thursday night?
We're bringing heat.
Engage 8 boys. All 8.
And that, like, this is all weaving into everything. So, hey, Tucker, don't worry about the rundown. And if you're watching, don't worry too much about the rundown. But that's kind of part of the test, right? We saw Jalen Watson play deep into the third preseason game and look rusty. I mean, he was playing because he had no live reps basically before that point.
Yes.
And so if it is Williams, and also depending on where Shamari Connor winds up, looking at Nate's eyebrows, I don't see anything. And how Spags attempts to and how Merritt attempts to solve that specific issue. Nate, don't get in trouble by sharing state secrets. But what is your view of that enormous question right now on a group that is largely unproven in the roles they're being asked to be put into, except for Trent McDuffie, unless he's on the outside, and then it's kind of a new role for him too, a little bit.
Right. And the beauty of this is if we don't know it, they surely don't know it, being the Baltimore Ravens.
This is why, again, if you're just listening to the podcast, why Nate has a red dot on his temple right now is because currently the Ravens don't know it, but Nate's been to practice. So this is as worried as I've been. This is as worried as I've been about Nate's well-being during a podcast. Well, top 5.
Yeah, so look, hey, my bed is made.
That's,
so you ain't got to worry about that, Coach. You ain't got to worry. Coach, you ain't got to worry about that. Bed's already made. Clearly, I've been in the meeting rooms paying attention. Now, look, there might be a moment where you see Jaden Hicks and Shamari Connor on the field at the same time, kids.
I don't hate it. I don't hate it.
And hey, Lamar, just because we show you something pre-snap, it ain't going to be that post-snap. And what was troubling to a certain point in the second half of last year's game, if you watched closely, and I wonder if you picked up on this too, Seth, when you watched the AFC Championship game last year, they were like, we'll do our usual stuff. Obviously, we'll blitz, we'll do a little mix and match, a little, hey, that looks like that, but it's not really that. By about the middle of the third quarter, they were like, it's cover 2. Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's cover 2. Yeah. Oh, you're just shocked? It's still cover 2.
Well, and they also figured out in the AFC Championship, your receivers can't beat our corners. And hey, all due respect to Zay Flowers, who's the only one of them who could, right? But even him, I mean, he got left alone. There was a blown coverage. It happens. But
that was literally like cover. It was like either quarters or some version of cover 2, and legitimately stopped looking at Zay Flowers because he was like, he's not throwing that ball.
Yeah, he's not throwing. Oh crap!
What the hell is that?
Yeah, and so they realized, and that's one thing where I'm really curious about. Spags last year really got, especially once Amenahu was healthy, Snead took that next step. That was the most Spags-friendly defense I could think of. Other than if you added Myles Garrett. Yes, if you added Myles Garrett, that would be even more Spags-friendly. But I mean, in terms of having 2 elite guys in coverage, and then multiple solid guys in coverage behind them. 3 safeties you could trust to rotate all over the field, all that stuff. So one of those things has changed this year, and that's where it's at least a big factor. And this is the way I branded this article, or branded whatever, is these are issues that could go one way or the other. And if the majority of them go the Chiefs' way, I like them against the field. I really do. I think they've got a good team. And they've got Patrick Mahomes. I know it's, pretty hot take that the 2-time defending NFL champions might do it again. But these are the things that can swing the season and raise the floor of the ceiling. If the cornerback room is able to be 95% of what it was last year, their chances of being an elite defense rise significantly. It's just a matter of how are you going to do it? And I think that safety room might be able to cover up from some of the deficiencies in the corner room.
I just don't know how likely that number is. I know this is crazy for like 3 different reasons that I should not have had the experience that I did. But a week or 2 ago, I think Nate Tice maybe tweeted out some just crazy Spags clips, and a lot of it was going through the playoffs. And it was absolutely cinematic to watch. But for whatever reason, when I started the clip, I'm like, I'm just gonna see how many of these are Snead. Guys, they were all Snead, not literally, but 80% of them involved Snead and 70% of them were Snead.
Right.
And that's nothing away from McDuffie, obviously. He was frankly, I think there was one Josh Williams clip kind of throughout that one in terms of what Spags was doing and who was executing it. I'm conflicted on this, and again, it's silly because we talked about how great this duo was last year. We talked about the cost for Snead and the trade conversations and all of those things. We've talked about this defense. We've talked about the new options at corner 2 and 3. We have talked about this so much, and still, again, watching some of those highlights back, it does remind you that Spags had he was maybe more than just 2, but just at corner. On Steve Spagnuolo's chessboard, he had 2 queens. Snead and McDuffie could do anything. And it's all right, so actually, I think this analogy is going to work. Maybe Joshua Williams is a knight, right? You can move him all the way back or all the way up or all the way sideways, but there's not the same versatility in everything you can trust those guys to do. And it is the thing right now. Even as we've talked about it plenty this offseason, it's the thing I'm still nervous about for 2024, I think, with the exception of one other contender that we have accepted as being pretty set and settled and not being a big problem when Thursday gets here. But it's another thing you wrote about, Seth, the offensive tackles. Kingsley Suamataia is a rookie who will also, like Carson Steele, but in a much larger role and a much higher draft pick, will be playing his first NFL football game on Thursday night under the lights in front of the nation, protecting Patrick Mahomes, et cetera, et cetera.
Right.
We've accepted that it's gone well and then it's going to keep going well, and I'm optimistic. Juwan Taylor on the other side also has some things to prove. So what about the bookend, Seth?
So the thing about the offensive line situation for me is this is actually another ceiling question for the Chiefs, similar to the wide receivers. If we have time to talk about it, I know we want to get into the specific matchup stuff. I call it a ceiling issue because we know with even just okay or even at times below average tackle play, the offensive line will be good enough in all likelihood with the interior it has. Toney's healthy. They rested him to make sure he's ready to go. That's great news. Toney, Humphrey, Smith, it's hardly even a debate anymore that that's the best interior offensive line in the NFL. So really all you need is unless your tackles are, we're talking abysmal, you're going to have a certain floor to your offense, assuming NFL caliber, even backup level guys. And so when Taylor was going through his struggles last year, including penalties, including it messing with his head and his timing and his footwork, and Donovan Smith being very late career Donovan Smithy, where he'd have some really good pass pro reps, have some rather poor ones. He was okay. Wasn't great. Was not great in the run game either. But he was passable, right? He didn't torpedo the offense. The offensive line, the tackles, to me, it's a ceiling issue. The floor is going to be a certain height. If Taylor can just be who he was during the second half of the season in the playoff run last year, and Suamataia is just average, the ceiling of the offense becomes really interesting because Suamataia is really talented. He's going to have rookie growing pains, by the way. Don't be surprised if you see at least one snap against the Ravens where you're like, oh no, because that happens. Everyone gets got.
How worried are you in the zoomed in view of the Ravens?
It's hard to know because they are under new coordinatorship, as it were. And so my assumption is he runs a similar system to the guy that he used to work for. But I'm assuming they're going to try to send some stunts and stuff his way. But he's working next to Joe Toney, who generally does a good job with that stuff. And Juwan Taylor and Trey Smith have had a full offseason next to each other because they struggled with it more last year than Smith and Toney did because Toney's a friggin' robot, man. And so the thing with
finally watched
Suamataia,
Terminator, by the way. I get it now.
Yeah. We all get it. He never stops, So
that movie's brutal, by the way. I was not. It's been really softened in pop culture.
Yes.
You see a future governor's dong in that movie. Sorry, go ahead, Seth. Just a little bit of it, but
it has been softened in pop culture. That really was a pretty brutal movie. Like, it is. It's a very 1980s R-rated movie.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
It's like, sure. Whoa. It's like if you go back and like rewatch like Predator 2, you're like, holy crap.
Yeah,
like
I wasn't allowed to watch any of those because I didn't exist when they came out, but they're probably in the peak of your childhood, right, Seth?
That's fair. Yeah. So the thing with Suamataia and Taylor, there's a ceiling issue there that can really make this offense. This offense needs like two things to break the Chiefs' way to be really, really, really frightening. And that's one of the things.
Now, how you get the blood flowing, how you get it really pumping and invigorated, of course, is can Juwan Taylor be better than Andrew Wiley in 2022, which is possible because I would like to remind people that they won a Super Bowl with Andrew Wiley probably maximizing everything he has in a single NFL season. And, of course, for Kingsley Suamataia, can he just be better than Donovan Smith? If he can be better than Donovan Smith, then this thing can be a rocket.
Mm-hmm.
Let's talk about actually, Seth. I want your elevator pitch here for the piece we're not going to talk about much today.
Oh, sure.
But that is unlocked for everybody. If you're waiting for the proof that Seth's article's worth. Let's 1 divided by. Hold on. You talk about this. I'll give you the rest of the math here in a second. Go ahead, Seth.
Absolutely. So, most people know that subscribe to the site is that every week, or at least every week, I try to do a Mahomes film review, kind of breaking down things that actually gauge quarterback play outside the box score. The reason being, in the box score, a screen pass is a better play by the quarterback than a 20-yard out to the opposite hash on a dime that the receiver drops. The box score, especially in a limited sample size, it can lie to you, right? So I try to look at things that measure what the quarterback does. And so I do that every week. And
it can be yours for, I think, 3 cents a day is what that averages out to.
Yeah, give or take.
$12 a year. mnchiefsfan.substack.com or bit.ly/Seth really hates money.
And so one of the fun things that I do at the end of the year then is I combine the numbers and then I show the charting for every week, have that all together in one chart, and then I average it together and I compare it to previous years because I've been doing this long enough to where now his 2018 numbers, which are always interesting to look at because it was his first year. And then I think I use the 2021 and 2022 numbers here as well. So you can look for trends and that kind of stuff. So it's available. It's on the Chief North newsletter. It's free. And it does contain, it's 18 games I did this year, including the entire playoff run. And I would just say I found a few things that interested and surprised me when I was looking through the numbers. I think you might too. And again, these are things that are charting, like things that actually measure quarterback play. My goal is with all of this stuff is, okay, what information do I need to know how good a quarterback is? Well, I need to know his pocket presence. Well, how would I measure that? Well, by charting how many times he bails from a clean pocket in a game and then averaging that out. And it's the same thing with accuracy versus inaccuracy, created yards, that sort of thing. So I think it's probably, if I were a betting man, if I were to bet, like, what's like the single thing that I'm probably most known for or whatever, it's the Patrick Mahomes charting and it's the full 2023 numbers. I think if you like going beyond the box score, I think you'll really like it. And it was really interesting to do. Elevator pitch.
My
really long elevator.
My takeaway is that it is a trope at this point to say that a player gets better in the playoffs or under bright lights or whatever. That's also when the competition gets better and more intense, and he does. And Seth can more or less prove it in numbers now. It's crazy.
Yeah. It was freakish. I won't waste any more of our time on it. You should really check it out. You see what he does, especially in terms of dialing back mistakes. He basically played a playoffs that was virtually devoid of mistakes. His accuracy went up a little bit. His plays created went up a little bit. And he didn't throw a single potential pick. He did throw an actual pick in the Super Bowl. He missed one shot, like one open receiver within the framework of the play in 4 games. That's unbelievable stuff. And so it's worth checking out. But I mean, you saw he and Travis Kelce both realized the level they had to bring things to in the playoffs. And they just did it. It is beautiful.
Yeah. To this point about the offensive line, there's no quarterback who eliminates negative plays more than Patrick Mahomes.
Yeah.
And so even when Kingsley Suamataia is likely to make a mistake, there is no better quarterback to cover it up than Patrick Mahomes. So the Chiefs are putting a lot of faith, obviously, in Kingsley, but they have some idea of how it could work because Mahomes is just that good, even when he's out of structure, let alone within structure. And so, look, run up the gut, swing pass, end around, jet sweep, RPO slant, comeback route, nice little dig, whatever the hell Kelce wants to do on a third down. And then you hope to play action them to death and hope the guy with the number 1 jersey on catches the ball. That is ultimately what the game plan really comes down to. Because if the Chiefs want to move the ball efficiently, sort of matriculate this thing like they did in the AFC Championship game, of course they can. They did it with only 3 viable skill position players, okay? Now we think, they have more. But they need a deep shot. They need a dagger from somewhere. And, play action double moves, baby. Look for them. They're going to probably be there if things go a certain way and Kingsley and Jawan Taylor can hold up.
I think that's the most fun part. Let's talk about the Chiefs' offense here against the Ravens. That does feel like the thing, Nate, that was missing notably throughout enormous chunks of last season, even when the deep shots were there. Either Mahomes... I don't think it's a coincidence maybe that Mahomes didn't trust his deep threats. That's really just a play to Seth's favorite MVS quote. And there does seem to be a chance for that gear to return. We also alluded to this earlier. Mike McDonald is now the head coach of the Seattle Seahawks. He took a couple assistants with him. I think it was a DB's coach and D-line coach, something like that. Your imperfect comparison is, Spags left and took Joe Cullen and Dave Merritt. Yikes. I don't know if those were necessarily the second and third guys in line. In fact, I don't believe they were because somebody got offered the job of Ravens defensive coordinator and stayed and took it. Good for him. But there is some player turnover and a ton of coaching turnover on that Ravens defense. Where do you guys fall in terms of how you're willing to expect them to handle the Chiefs, knowing that this is as compelling as a week 1 game, I think, as you can get? Seth kind of rolled his eyes earlier, Nate, when you said, like, some people are going to look at this as the AFC Championship rematch. Seth rolled his eyes because I imagine, Seth, it's not. Both of these teams, especially the Chiefs offense and the Ravens defense, are very different.
Yes. And that's kind of, to me, the Ravens have had a little bit of turnover, not a ton, but most importantly, they have bled some talent on the defensive side of the ball. And they also lost a defensive coordinator that was rightfully being talked about. He got a head coaching job.
He got a head coaching job in a cycle that was not friendly to defensive coaches. Just correct. Modern NFL.
And he really did a terrific job. Like, if you go back and watch in the playoffs, watch Houston the week before they played the Ravens, and then watch the Ravens game. He figured out, hey, man, the rook can't handle sim pressures. And then just
spammed him.
Yep, spammed him with sim pressures and zone blitzes. And that's where Stroud, have to take that next step. That's what Belichick did to Mahomes in 2018. I mean, that's hard to do.
That's a good point, yeah.
So, I mean, McDonald is an excellent defensive coach. It's hard to not believe that they would take a step back. To me, it's like the idea that if Spags was gone and took Dave Merritt with him, the kind of his right-hand guy, then to be his coordinator there, it would be hard for me to believe, even if it was Joe Cullen, like a coach that I really like, that there wouldn't be a step backward, at least initially, especially if you bleed out a little talent. The other side of things is, and you alluded to this is a different Chiefs offense, albeit without Hollywood Brown, which does change things a little bit. But the reality is, this is no longer a rookie Rashee Rice that they're finally incorporating into the offense as a major player. This is with an offseason of, okay, come on, let's take that next step. And with Xavier Worthy and Juju Smith-Schuster, which shouldn't be ignored, I don't think he'll have a huge role, but he'll have a role. And even that's an upgrade. If your wide receiver 4 is better than it was, that matters. If your wide receiver 3 is better than it was, that matters. So it's kind of a different looking offense. And so, people love to talk about it as a rematch. It sort of is to an extent, but I'd be surprised if the Ravens held the Chiefs to 17 again.
Yes, as would I. And as we've talked about, you guys know Derrick Henry's on the Ravens now. Let's flip the field then, because as we've talked about in years past, you know what we've also done? We've talked about how the Ravens need to run the ball to win an AFC championship, and we've talked about how Derrick Henry just needs to run the ball to win an AFC championship, and now those guys are on the same team. Nate, how do you think the Ravens are going to try to attack the Chiefs, huh? You think it's going to work? It's also, notably, and as Seth has talked about recently for sure, it is not the playoffs, it's September, so things could be different in terms of how the Chiefs attack the Ravens.
Right. So I still think you're going to see a healthy dosage of blitzes. That can be for the run if necessary, or to sort of speed Lamar up, on third downs. This stat is brought to you by True Media. At 29 years of age, Derrick Henry still led the NFL in the most carries last year, for the 4th time in the last 5 seasons, guys. He weirdly, in an old school traditional way, does get better with more touches. So that'll be interesting to watch. Like, if the Chiefs can build a lead throughout, say, like middle of the second quarter, like how much does Derrick Henry then become a factor? It's something that we all saw in 2019 when the Chiefs immediately took the lead against the Tennessee Titans in the AFC Championship game. But yeah, the Ravens want to prove themselves in a way, sort of redeem themselves for not trusting the best part of their offense, the strength of their team, which is really a physical style that punishes you, that continues to bludgeon you throughout the course of the game with the running backs. And now they've introduced Derrick Henry again at age 29 with Lamar Jackson, who, will be as healthy as he'll be all year on Thursday, because he hasn't been hit and he hasn't taken any, significant, obviously, reps in the preseason. So I think this game lends itself to more points, just traditionally, given that you have game plan for this for honestly months now. And both teams are familiar with one another because they just played in January. I don't know if Derrick Henry will be a factor because Mike Pennell is healthy, right? Or Chris Jones, which, kind of gets glossed over. But, like, I have to remind myself that this man was not in uniform. He was in the building. But he was not in uniform. And that will play a significant role in this game because the last time the Chiefs played the Ravens, Chris Jones devoured human beings in a way that was both impressive and necessary toward victory. So they're going to try to run the ball, but of course, will the Ravens make a similar mistake if they get down by 2 scores? Because that was the key in January. Derrick Henry won't matter if you're down 10 in the fourth quarter, just like all of a sudden you couldn't use Lamar's dual threat ability because you had to get in drop back mode for much of the second half. So it would behoove the Chiefs to get a lead. But also Chris Jones playing in this game compared to not playing in the opener last year should
different defense.
Yeah, should be quite considerably a bonus for Steve Spagnuolo.
Seth, to the lessons of the AFC Championship game, you've also talked about, again, as I alluded to, that Steve Spagnuolo prioritizes things differently in December and January than he does in September. What are you expecting there in terms of what the Ravens bring and what the Chiefs are willing to have their secondary priority be while they focus on whatever priority number 1 is?
Chiefs fans, be prepared to be upset that Derrick Henry ran for 6 yards a carry.
Yeah.
I think there's a distinct, because here's the deal. If you let Derrick Henry run for 6 yards a carry, but he doesn't get that 170-yard touchdown, take that all day.
Can I do some math for you, Seth? Can I just take the math off your plate and say something real quick?
That would be amazing.
10 6-yard Derrick Henry carries sure would hurt your soul, but it should hurt you less than 175-yard Zay Flowers touchdown.
And that's exactly right. Or 175-yard Derrick Henry touchdown.
True.
One reason Derrick Henry has been who he is he's got rare breakaway speed for a guy who plays the way he plays. He hits that edge, and if you don't have the angle, you are done. And that's a huge part of how he plays. Now, I am curious, because, man, I got to tell you, I didn't realize that he's almost 31. Yeah. And I didn't realize that he's had 2,030 carries throughout his career, not including the playoffs.
He's the league in physical carries 4 of the last 5 seasons.
And he's a physical marvel. My hope is he continues to defy the odds because I think he's a great player. And the NFL is more fun with great players. And he's a unique player. And the NFL is more fun with unique players. But I would not be surprised to see Spags not utilize some of the alignments that they utilized in the AFC Championship, which the Ravens were not ready for. People talk about, well, they should have run the ball more. They weren't that successful when they ran the ball. It's like, oh, but on the 4th down, yes, that is true. When Tashawn Wharton had the bejesus held out of him, yes, they managed to convert. They had a few successful plays, but they also ran into a wall more often than they thought they would, and it sets you behind the sticks. We talked about this offseason. The problem with running the ball is every now and then you end up with a 0-yard gain or a 2-yard loss. You're going to run the ball on 2nd and 12? Like, what's your level of commitment there? Now, maybe it is. With the read option stuff that they've been preparing with him and Lamar, it could be deadly. One little side thing that I would say, the only game where Lamar Jackson has played really well against Spags came a few years back, and it was smack dab in the middle of we're going to play Chris Jones at defensive end the majority of the snaps, and Chris Jones was not ready for the read option stuff. Because that's not who he is. You can't ask him to play it the same way you'd ask a 260-pounder. Like, you can't.
Who led the team in tackles that night, Seth?
Oh, man, I don't even
know.
The
most important stat.
I genuinely don't even know. I just know who led the team. Oh, man. I would just say that's the best Lamar's ever played against the Chiefs. And part of it was because that was the night the Chiefs learned, hopefully definitively, that Chris Jones, and man, they've used it perfectly since then. Chris Jones at defensive end is a passing down changeup. Wow. It is not a primary position.
Holy smokes.
I don't know if Tucker has the answer or his guess, but this was also, honest to God, the guess that I was thinking about.
It was Dirty Dan.
Okay.
That's what Tucker said, Dan. And I thought it's either Dan or what year was
ladies
this?
and gentlemen, in early 2021 regular season game, I think this was week 2? Week 2, September 19th. Lamar Jackson had a couple picks. It happens. But was really efficient. I mean, he averaged 9 yards an attempt in this game. Good God. Also had 107 rushing yards, 2 TDs on the ground. The team leader in tackles was Anthony Hitchens.
If your middle linebacker leads the team in tackles,
then you should pay him $16 million a year. I'm glad
you either
had a
either had a really dominant day against a team that refused to stop running the ball, or something went really wrong, because that means he got run into about 10 times.
Over and over again.
Also, most of those tackles were about 5-6 yards down the field, if that.
Dan Sorensen had a sack, had 2 tackles for loss, did have a quarterback hit, also had 10 tackles and 4 whiffs.
Yep, that is not an ideal
whiffs.
That is not an ideal stat line. So
10 tackles, 4 whiffs, kids.
I am curious. Mike Dana and George Karlaftis are much better fits against what they like to do on the edge with read option stuff. Karlaftis actually.
Do you think Felix is going to play?
No.
Do you think he's going to over under 1 defensive snap?
I think over on that, but I think Cam Thomas will take.
Yeah.
At least I think Cam Thomas will take a dozen snaps and Felix will take virtually none.
He's a first round pick, guys.
Yeah, that's pretty embarrassing, Nate. So I'm going to add one stat to the mix that may support Nate's Engage 8 scenario from, I believe it's pronounced Jordan Fute of ChiefsOnSI.com. He did a really good game preview earlier today, including these stats about Lamar Jackson. Jordan wrote, while quarterback Lamar Jackson feasted against cover 2, cover 3, and cover 4 shells, one weakness can be exploited. Arjun Menon and Alex Fiesel's excellent tracking data from last season reveals that Jackson faced cover 0 on just 4.5% of his dropbacks, but posted a ghastly negative 0.43 EPA per play average. That was the second worst mark in all of football. Steve Spagnuolo's Chiefs defense was awesome on cover 0 looks, surrendering negative 3.1 EPA per play and a completion rate below 50%. You wanna play the cover 0 game a little bit with Lamar Jackson? He will give you reason to do that, it sounds like.
Absolutely. And this is where part of like they have 3 safeties that I'm comfortable with in Reed, Cook, and Connor. They've got a guy that they are raving about, this rookie. That gives you some options that you wouldn't have, because you can utilize some guys in some hybrid roles and you can be a little more aggressive. If you've got someone you at least think can slow down Jackson in the open field, to where if you give up a big play, it's a 20-yard play and not a 60-yard play. Because then it's just math, right? Well, okay, we stopped him from 0, 0, 0, -1, -1, 0, 0, nothing, 3, 1, 1, 20 yards. Oh, that's a bummer. But if that other one's a 60-yard touchdown, it might not. The juice isn't worth the squeeze. And so we'll see. But that is a really good stat. Jackson has traditionally not done very well against cover 0 looks. And the thing is, though, it's not the playoffs.
You're right. Right.
It's not the playoffs. And Spags has just bought all in on the Andy Reid mechanism of, is it January yet? No? Like, even last year, down the stretch, we're all like, they're going to make the playoffs, right? They were still holding stuff back. When you go back and rewatch all 4 playoff games, wildly different game plans. Man, I love Spags so much, but I know we don't have time for that.
The moment when Drew Tranquil said, "Oh, you thought it was gonna be like this, huh?" and just threw his entire body into the Baltimore Ravens and said, "We'll do that 45 more times. Watch me."
And that's
like, dude, chill,
buddy. You weigh 235 pounds. Relax.
I am a torpedo today.
I'm gonna take us here and I'm gonna pull us into prediction territory. So if you don't have a number in your head now, it's time. Here's what I'll say big picture wise. Neither team is going to win a game that truly matters to them on Thursday. This game will have implications, but the Chiefs are about a three-peat, and the Ravens have been excellent in the regular season before. The Ravens have questions asked about what happens to them in the playoffs, specifically, largely, against now Mahomes in the playoffs. So with that being said, I still remember what it looked like when Travis Kelce got a week off in week 18. And I understand that this team would love to be at home throughout the entirety of the playoffs this year. I'm going to always put an emphasis on the 1 seed as long as it gives you an extra week of rest and it guarantees you that another team cannot beat you in that week. So this game matters. I hope the Chiefs treat it like it matters. I mean, They will in that sense. But there is some separation between the first game of the NFL season and the last game of the NFL season, even if they're both very important. I really wanted to go lower scoring out of the gate here, but I have a few questions about the Ravens defense and a few questions about the Chiefs defense, and I'm really excited about the new wrinkles in the Chiefs offense, and I think the Ravens offense is going to be reliably difficult to deal with. I'm going Chiefs 27, Ravens 24 to give us some real fireworks to kick off the 2024 NFL season. Seth, what do you got?
Yeah.
Ooh, Nate, you ready? You got yours? Go ahead.
Yeah,
Nate.
I'm
Go
ready.
ahead.
I had Chiefs 27, Ravens 23 in my head.
Let's go.
Yeah.
27-22, Seth?
I'm gonna come out swinging this year.
Of course he is.
Yeah.
Chiefs 34, Ravens 24.
Okay.
There you have it. The objectively correct pick. Last question for you. I want a scale of 1 to 10. How surprised would you be if the Ravens win this game? Seth, 1 to 10.
6. So not shocked, but a little surprised.
Nate?
4.
I was gonna say 4.
Yeah,
I don't think means we're picking the Chiefs. That scale.
Right.
That's why I use that scale, because I thought if it was like 4, that would mean 4 is 5 or 6. You know,
I think 4 means there's a 40% chance the Ravens win this game in our book.
Right. Yeah.
Is that right?
I think I just picked the Ravens.
No. Wait. No.
Wait, hang on. We can't break my streak. I have not picked against the Chiefs.
No, you definitely know it, Seth. Let me tell you. Nobody thinks you picked against the Chiefs, okay? If that's what you're worried about, no one's worried about that.
Phew.
This is why we can't do an hour and 10 minutes every show. The last 10 minutes, we start doing math and we start doing predictions, then it gets confusing and we lose the plot. Other than that, though, today, guys, I think great show. I think you can go read Seth's look back on Mahomes' 2023, and I know Nate has something special cooking for the kickoff that will be coming to The Athletic very shortly. I don't know if you want to tease what it is or not, Nate. I'll let you decide that. It's quiet. It stays quiet. And Nate, get us out of here and into the beginning of the 2024 NFL football season.
Remember, kids, we've made it. We deserve this. This is also the episode, and I wonder if you guys realize this too, but this was the episode that we made this lovely voyage start.
Was it really?
Yeah, this was the episode that we made our beloved debut on KCSN.
What was that, 6 years ago, 7?
Yeah, it feels like it. Thank you all. Honestly, we are extremely grateful to do this silly podcast about a silly sport where the freaking ball isn't round. And it all starts again tomorrow. So thank you for dealing with us this offseason, for hanging in there. I don't know, Glenn. I don't know if we're gonna get to off-season lessons. That seems a bit too late.
I did off-season lessons. I'm clear.
Yeah. You might want to have to go back a couple episodes, but honestly, guys, get out there and roll them windows down. Roll them down, man. It's the best smell in all of Kansas City. The tailgate at Arrowhead Stadium upon another season approaching us. I love it, fellas, because there's no more talk. All this all season about that yickety yak, that cheeky talk. Can't have it no more.
Chin wagging going on.
A lot of chin wagons and mollygags. No more talking, boys.
Yes. Hey, happy anniversary, guys.
I wish we would have called this show "No More Talking, Boys."
Oh. It was a really different anniversary than mine with Jack.